The notion of a value chain goes back many, many decades. It is first predicated on the idea that if you look at any product or service, there is a chain of players, actors, firms that are involved in converting raw goods into a deliverable service or product, what we might call simply the supply chain. So think about an automobile manufacturer. You start off with mining companies, mining iron ore. Those are eventually turned into products like steel, pressed into steel plates, and eventually manufactured into what we call an automobile. Then eventually we then have a distribution channel, a sales organization that pushes those out, and ultimately the product, the automobile, resides in the customer who makes the purchase. So we can think about the value chain as between different firms, and then we can also think about the value chain within the firm. What are the series of activities that the firm engages in to take raw goods and materials and convert them into saleable products and services? It's useful to make a distinction between what we might refer to as primary activities versus secondary activities. Primary activities are those that continue this logic of the value chain, if you will, thinking about inbound logistics, manufacturing, operations, outbound sales and distribution and marketing, and ultimately maybe end of sales service that's provided. Secondary activities are activities that support those primary activities. Maybe it's your human resource system, your IT system, maybe your R&D function that would support all of these primary activities. In the chart you see here on the bottom of the slide, you'll notice that that has this notion of margin. One way you can use these types of frames is to put up here the revenue of the entire firm as the entire space covered by the arrow. And then each of these different functions is a cost associated with doing that piece of the business here, where the size of the triangle, the size of the rectangle represents how much cost is incurred in each of these activities. You hope, of course, that your costs are less than your revenues, creating a profit margin for you at the end of the day. For our purposes, I think the value chain is a useful concept to begin to generate these capabilities that you might have within a firm. What are the core important capabilities that the firm engages in to deliver value at the end of the day? Now for Southwest, once again, I've named a few. Short turnaround times in terms of their flights, 15-minute turnaround times. High quality of service in terms of on time and low baggage loss during their flights. So what drives those capabilities once we can outline what they are? Well, we want to think about people, processes, and systems, the underlying attributes that drive the capabilities that the firm might possess. There's a number of ways to think about this. One thing to think about are resources versus capabilities. This is a distinction we sometimes make in the strategy literature. Resources are any number of factors that contribute to the ability to have a capability here. I have a little typology here just to discuss some of the various types of resources one might think about. We talk about peoples and assets, and we also talk about systems and processes, as we had on the previous slide. It's also useful to think about tangible versus intangible resources. Tangible resources being those things that maybe can be embodied in a physical artifact, perhaps easier to trade in an external market, versus intangible assets and resources that are a little harder to get your hands around, if you will, as a specific product or good. So what would be some examples of tangible people or assets? Clearly things like cash, the physical plant of an organization, manufacturing facilities, distribution channels, delivery vehicles, the capital that the firm has put together. Patents are an interesting example of a tangible asset that firms have that they can buy and sell in external markets often. Then of course talent. Individuals with high skill levels would be a tangible asset that an organization would have. Intangible assets would be things more like brands, reputation, expertise, loyalty, very important contributors to capabilities that firms might have, but a little harder to get your hands around at the end of the day in order to be able to kind of articulate. When we think about systems and processes, we can think about everything from IT systems, human resource systems, alliances that a firm might have or contracts a firm might have with distribution channels or suppliers and the like. When we think about intangible processes or systems, we can think about things like culture. When it comes to Southwest Airlines, one of the things that many people cite as a key to their success is this unique culture that they've created that very much motivates their employees to be dedicated to the enterprise, to work hard, and to work with a high quality, what they like to call their love culture.